Hello. On the 23rd of March, Cambridge International announced that we would not hold June 2020 exams anywhere in the world to protect the safety of students and teachers. We're now asking schools to collaborate with us as we make evidence-based decisions about grades for each student in each subject across Cambridge IGCSE, O-Level, AS and A-Level and Cambridge Pre-U. I'm Zoe Neville-Smith, Communications Manager at Cambridge International. I'm joined by Rachel Bateman, who is our Senior Assessment Advisor, Assessment Standards and Quality. Hi, Rachel.
Hi Zoe.
Rachel's here to explain how we're going to work with schools to award grades to their students. So Cambridge International has shared a 4-step process with schools, and this is step 1. Teachers use evidence and judgment to grade every student entered in each subject in their centre to produce predicted grades. So Rachel, the most obvious evidence or judgment schools might use here is their forecast grades. Are these the same as the predicted grades that we're asking for?
Well, forecast grades are not the same as the predicted grades we're asking for. The predicted grade is a piece of new information that we're asking you to submit as a school, together with rank orders, which we'll talk about later. We're asking you to submit to us a predicted grade, which is based on a number of different sources of evidence that you have available to you, but they don't need to be the same as the forecast grades you have submitted if you've done so. Your subject teachers at your school should determine a predicted grade for each of the candidates in each syllabus based on evidence you've gathered on candidates' performance from the duration of the course, from recently as well, weighing up these different sources of evidence to see what they tell you about the candidate's performance. And overall, the predicted grade that you determine should be the grade that, in the professional opinion of your subject teachers, the candidate would have been most likely to achieve if the June 2020 exam series had taken place. It's important to also be aware of the fact that predicted grades are not target grades that you might have set your candidates earlier on in the course as a motivational tool for them, perhaps slightly higher than they're actually going to achieve. And they're also not the sort of grade the candidate would have achieved if everything had been in the area of their greatest strength in the exam, nor if everything had been in the area of their greatest weakness. Ultimately, they are the judgment of the grade they would be most likely to achieve based on the range of evidence you have access to as a subject teacher.
Thanks, Rachel. You talked about the range of evidence that teachers might have access to, and we know that not all of our schools submit forecast grades to Cambridge International. So what advice would you give teachers in coming up with these predicted grades? What evidence can they look to?
Yeah, the evidence that teachers can use can take a variety of forms. And as a subject teacher, you need to use all the evidence that's available to you so that you can make sure that your judgment is as objective and accurate as possible. But we know that centres are going to have different combinations of evidence at the moment, and that some of the evidence you might be using might be incomplete. We're trusting your professional judgment and knowing what will be suitable, reliable evidence. And you make the judgment based on the evidence that's available to you. So you can start by reviewing the evidence that you've got of your candidate's performance by looking at things like classwork, coursework, assignments and any mock exams that have taken place to make an overall judgment. And you can use work that the candidate's produced remotely since your school has been teaching online. But you should also bear in mind that you need to be able to authenticate that work. You also should think about any tests that the candidate has undertaken, any baseline tests, the Yellis or the Alice tests from Cambridge Chem, any other external tests that the candidate has that can provide you with useful sources of evidence in making your judgment. And bear in mind that the evidence that you have of a candidate's performance will relate to different components or different papers within the overall syllabus. And you should use the syllabus document to determine what sort of weight each part of that assessment is given within the syllabus, so how much it contributes to the overall syllabus grade, to help you to weigh up those different sources of evidence to arrive at your final predicted grade. I should also say that if your candidate was due to use access arrangements in the June 2020 series, that the predicted grade that you determine should be the one that they would be most likely to have achieved if these access arrangements had been in place. And so once you've looked at your evidence of your candidate's performance based on these multiple sources of evidence available to you, you need to also then look at the information and the support we have provided to you at Cambridge to help you to align your judgments with the Cambridge International Standard. So have a look on the School Support Hub for support resources that we have available for each of our syllabuses. For some syllabuses, you can find example marked responses of candidate work on the School Support Hub. There are example candidate response booklets for some syllabuses and coursework training handbooks where you have coursework in the syllabus, which set out what the expected level of performance is for particular marks. And you can compare this level of performance that you can see in these support resources with the performance that your candidates have demonstrated. You can then use past paper grade thresholds on the School Support Hub and in some cases on the website as well, mark schemes and so on to help you convert the performance that you've observed in your own candidates to a predicted grade based on evidence you have from the support resources and from past paper grade thresholds. And in some cases in syllabus documents, there are also grade descriptions available which might be useful to you.
Thanks, Rachel. I think that will be especially helpful for anyone who perhaps hasn't entered any candidates for a Cambridge exam before. So a teacher who's new to a school or they're new to teaching at a certain syllabus. And to have all those support documents available means they can try and make those judgments without having done it before. So it's good that that level of resource is there.
Yes, I think you're right, absolutely.
Yeah, but with some schools closed, some teachers have told us that they're struggling to access the data and the evidence that they need to make the judgments and all the kind of historic information they have on the students. So what would you say to them?
Yeah, well, we recognise that we're all working in very difficult circumstances and teachers might have incomplete evidence available to them as the only evidence they can use. Make the judgment on the evidence that's available to you. Use all of the evidence that you've got to determine the candidate's predicted grades so that you can make sure this judgment is as objective and accurate as possible. And we'll have to accept that evidence might be different for different centres and maybe based on incomplete evidence that centres will need to use their professional judgment to evaluate and to use to form their predicted grade. I think it's also relevant at this point to talk about private candidates. If you as a centre have accepted entries from private candidates, then you can include those private candidate students in the predicted grades you generate and in the rank orders that you generate if your head of centre is confident that the staff have seen sufficient evidence of the student's achievement to make that objective judgment. So if the candidate has not been taught at your centre, then your centre needs to consider carefully whether the evidence that they have about that candidate's performance can be authenticated. So thinking about if the evidence has come from another educational institution and from previous schools, then that might be more acceptable. I think if it's a private tutor that the candidate has been working with, then the school needs to evaluate whether they can trust the evidence that has been generated with the working of that private tutor. And the school should find means to look at that and to authenticate that evidence and to make a judgment of whether it's sufficient or not. As is the case with all schools, it's the head of the centre that's responsible for vouching for the authenticity of the evidence that's gathered about each candidate. But we know that in certain circumstances, there just won't be enough evidence for private candidates or for some of private candidates in order to provide that predicted grade and placing them in the rank order. And in those circumstances, it's unlikely to be possible that we can give grades to all private candidates. And instead, we would invite them to take their exams in the November 2020 series to get their grades.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. Can I ask what role do mock exams or stage exams like the AS level, what role do they play in this?
Yeah, well, I'll come to the sort of staged AS and A levels first. If you've got a candidate who's taking an A level by a route that carries forward their AS result from a previous series, their performance in the AS is a really strong indicator of their likely outcome in the A level. Candidates who've received a particular grade in their AS level would normally be expected to achieve the same grade in their A level after a further year of study if they're making progress at a usual pace. You could consider, if a candidate has made particularly strong progress over the course of this year, that their grade may be one grade higher than that which they achieved at AS. But the usual relationship would be that the indicator that the evidence that has been generated from their assessment in their AS is the strongest indicator of their performance at A level. And similarly, if the candidate was due to resit a qualification in the June 2020 series, if they've taken it in an earlier series as well, then their result in that previous series will be a really strong indicator of their result in the resit. We know that candidates who are resitting are aiming to achieve a higher grade in the resit series, but evidence shows that doesn't really always happen. About half of the candidates receive the same grade as they had before, and it's certainly unusual for candidates to improve by more than one grade. So bear that in mind when you're making your judgments about candidates who have taken the exam in a previous series. With mock exams are clearly a good piece of evidence to use if they have been based on past papers, for example, for the qualification, for the syllabus, if they've been taken in exam conditions, if you've been able to mark them using the marking criteria for the syllabus. They shouldn't be taken as the only source of evidence to use. They're a source of evidence for you to bear in mind when you're making your overall professional judgment about the candidate's predicted grade.
Thanks, Rachel. That's really helpful. Okay, let's move on to step 2 in Cambridge's process, which is teachers rank students based on expected attainment at each subject in each grade. So, Rachel, can you talk us through the ranking process? It has to be done grade by grade, is that right?
Yes, a rank order of candidates is a list of candidates in order of their attainment, from the highest attaining to the lowest attaining. And we're asking you to do this for each grade that you have predicted candidates will achieve for each syllabus in which you've made entries. So within a particular syllabus, if you've given a predicted grade of A to a list of 5 candidates, then we ask you to give a rank of 1 to the highest attaining candidate and give a rank of 2 to the second highest attaining candidate within that grade, and so on. So the candidate who has been given a rank of 1 within the grade is the one where the evidence suggests they are most securely above the threshold for that grade. And you place all of your candidates where you've been able to decide on a predicted grade for them in the rank order for that grade. So there'll be separate rank orders produced for each of the grades that you have predicted. You should overall produce a single rank order for most syllabuses. Don't produce separate rank orders for different entry options or for different classes or for school and private candidates. You produce a single rank order at syllabus level for each of the grades that you've predicted across those different variables, the entry options, classes, school and private candidates. But you should produce separate rank orders for certain types of syllabuses. So for some of our Cambridge IGCSEs, we have core and extended routes, core and extended tiers, and you need to treat those as separate syllabuses, even though they share the same syllabus code, and produce separate rank orders for a core tier grades and extended tier grades. And similarly for AS and A-level candidates, if you've got candidates entering for both of those qualifications, then you should produce separate rank orders for AS grades and A-level grades, even where the syllabus code is the same. And this is because the AS level grades are different from the A-level grades.
Okay, and what if a teacher thinks that 2 candidates in their class, for example, are equally strong and they can't differentiate between them? Can they be tied? Can they be given an equal rank?
No, so the rank orders you produce cannot contain any ties. You won't be able to submit them with any ties. So that means that you cannot place 2 or more candidates in the same position in the rank order. So if your evidence shows that 2 or more of your candidates have performed in a very similar way, you need to use your professional judgment to separate them and place them in the order you believe is most appropriate, so that each candidate has a unique position in that rank order within each grade.
Okay, that's clear, thank you. So we know that some subjects are taught by more than one teacher. So with some of our IGCSE sciences, or when there's a particularly large cohort size, how would ranking work across all of those?
Yeah, so if more than one teacher has taught the syllabus at your school, then wherever possible, the teachers should work together to make sure that the students are appropriately ranked in relation to other students in the classes. So essentially that there is a single rank order produced across the classes teaching that subject. So one possible approach that we've set out is that perhaps the head of department produces an initial rank order for each grade across all classes, based on evidence available to them, and then shares this first attempt at a rank order with the other teachers of the subject, and has a conference call or an online meeting with the other teachers to discuss the candidates in the rank order, starting with the highest ranked candidate, that candidate ranked at 1 within the highest grade predicted by the school. And each teacher is given the opportunity to talk about the evidence that they've considered, their views, and argue on the basis of the evidence available whether the candidate's position in the rank order is correct, whether they should be raised or above other candidates already discussed or adjusted in their position. And this process is designed to make sure that all of the candidates at your centre have been fairly and consistently placed in the rank order for their predicted grade. So during this process of discussion and review, some of the initial positions in the rank order might need to be changed so that the rank order is consistent and acceptable across all subject teachers.
Let's move on to step 3. So step 3 is head of department and head of centre confirm predicted grades and rank orders for each subject and send them to Cambridge. So what is Cambridge International expecting heads of department and heads of school to do at this step?
Yeah, so once your subject teachers have agreed on the predicted grade for each of your candidates, where you've got sufficient evidence, and you've determined the rank order within each of these predicted grades, the head of centre needs to confirm that they're satisfied that the predicted grades and the rank orders have been properly decided by the subject teachers based on the evidence that's been available to them, and that those predicted grades and rank orders reflect a fair professional judgment of the candidates involved. We're not asking heads of centres to scrutinise and agree with every judgment that's been made, but we're asking them to confirm that the process of making the judgments has been carried out professionally, under their oversight, and that the people making those judgments are those that they trust to make such professional judgments. The centre will then need to send the grades to us at Cambridge International, and at the point that they send them to us, they'll need to indicate that they have the consent of the head of centre to do so, and make sure that the evidence says that the grades and the rank orders they're sending to us are accurate and there's no errors in what they've submitted to us. That's very important as well. And with any live exam series, we will be investigating any attempts to undermine the system that we could regard as malpractice.
Great. So when they've decided that they're happy with their teachers' grading and rank orders, how do schools send the predicted grades and rank orders to Cambridge International?
We're working to adapt our IT systems at the moment to collect the grades and the rank orders in a way that's going to be as simple as possible for centres. We're going to provide centres with detailed instructions and exemplification of how to do that and when to submit the data as soon as we can. We know that centres need some certainty so that they can plan this work with the teams at their schools, and we'll confirm the deadline for submitting the data as soon as we can, but it will be no earlier than the 29th of May, and schools will have a window of at least 2 weeks in which to submit the data.
Okay, at least schools can get ready.
Yes.
Okay, so you can imagine that once schools have submitted their predicted grades and ranks, that the students and parents will be pretty keen to know what they are. What's your advice to schools while they wait for the final grades to come back from Cambridge International?
Yeah, we understand that this is going to be a difficult situation for some people, but centres mustn't under any circumstances share the predicted grades nor the rank orders of students, with parents and carers, or anyone else outside of the centre. And this is because we want to protect the integrity of those teachers' judgments and avoid anyone at the centre, teachers, heads of department or senior leaders, being put under pressure by students and parents to submit a grade that isn't supported by evidence. It's also, needs to be borne in mind that the final grades that some of the students in a centre receive could be different from those that the centre has submitted. So again, keeping that confidential helps to manage those expectations for students.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the fourth and final step, where Cambridge combines this data with other information and makes any necessary adjustments before awarding final grades to students. So in this step, will Cambridge International just be checking the predictions from schools and awarding those grades?
It's not quite as simple as that, I'm afraid. We're going to take the data submitted by centres and we'll be carrying out a statistical standardisation exercise. We'll be using statistical evidence and from the historical performance of the centre in the syllabus, as well as global performance statistics to generate the candidate's overall grade. And we're going to be doing this to align judgments across centres, so that as far as possible, students are assessed on the same basis and are not unfairly advantaged or disadvantaged in the outcome that they receive. We'll be using the standardisation exercise to see whether the distribution of the predicted grades that the centre has sent to us for June 2020 is what we would expect candidates to achieve. So it won't change the rank order of students within your centre, the actual order from highest to lowest attaining within your centre. But if the distribution of your candidates' predicted grades is not what we would expect to see, we'll adjust the grades so that the distribution matches our expectations. And so this standardisation exercise may mean that the candidate is awarded a grade that isn't the same as the predicted grade or is the same as the predicted grade that the centre has supplied to us. And it also means that there isn't going to be any advantage gained by centres whose predicted grades are unrealistic. If our statistics show that your predicted grades are more generous than our expectation, we'll adjust the grades of some or all of your candidates downwards. And if the statistics show that your predicted grades are more severe than our expectations, we'll adjust the grades of some or all of your candidates upwards. And so the greater the difference between your predicted grades and our expectations, the more candidates' grades will be adjusted and the bigger the adjustments will be.
Okay. And we talked about the evidence that schools will be using to set their predicted grades. Will Cambridge International want to see that evidence when we're doing this standardisation exercise?
In some cases, we may ask you to send the evidence you've considered in making your professional judgments to us. So if we ask you to send the evidence, it's likely to be for a sample of your candidates. We'll identify the candidates whose evidence we'd like to see and ask you to send it to us. And even if, whether you hear from us or not, you should retain the evidence that you've gathered to inform the predicted grades and rank orders that you have determined.
And after the grades are awarded by Cambridge International, can schools appeal those grades?
Yes, schools will have a right to do so, and we'll share the full details and procedures for making an appeal before we release the results. At the moment, we can tell you that there'll be an appeals process. It's likely to be confined to situations in which you have reason to believe we've made an error in our statistical standardisation process. The same standardisation method will be applied to all centres taking a syllabus, and we're not going to then apply a different method to centres' data whose results disappoint them. For candidates who receive any disappointing grades, there will be an option to sit the exam in either the November 2020 series or the June 2021 series.
And do we know when Cambridge International will be releasing the results of the June 2020 series?
Yeah, we're working to the same sorts of timeframes as normal for the release of results for a June series, and we'll let centres know as soon as possible what the date is for the release of results.
Thank you. So Rachel, thank you so much for talking us through those 4 steps. How confident are you as an assessment professional that this will give students the grade that they deserve?
Well, Well, we've drawn on our wealth of assessment expertise in developing this method of grading students, and we believe it's the most valid, fair and effective method in these unique circumstances. We've been working with bodies worldwide. We've worked with different entities and other awarding bodies, governments and universities, to develop this process to assess students and provide grades. So we're confident that in the circumstances, it's the best option available.
Thank you. And do you have any final messages to schools?
Well, we want to encourage schools to submit predicted grades based on the evidence they have access to and their teachers' professional judgment. They know their students best and they should trust their expertise. And we want to say that the evidence they gather and the judgments they make are crucial to the fairness of the June 2020 series. We know that we're working in very difficult circumstances and we wish everyone well in those circumstances in our Cambridge International community, and that we're working as hard as possible to get the right information to them as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Rachel. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for your patience as we've developed and communicated our steps in setting grades for students. If you have any other questions about Cambridge International's response to the coronavirus outbreak, please visit cambridgeinternational.org/COVID. Thank you. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.